100 players who shook the cosh.
Byrne wanting a long time to clear that, he dwelt on it too long. Barnes, and Barnes again. 3.
The most technically gifted player I've ever seen at Anfield was John Barnes.
Just mercurial, I think.
His poise, his grace on the ball, his general balance, you know, as a player.
But as soon as he pulled on a red shirt, he used class.
John Barnes to run at Feely, who gets over the fullback, now at Evans, on his left foot.
I think Barnsley was, like, you know, just an unbelievable player.
Skill, pace, strength, crosses, top goals.
It's going to be Barnes. Curled brilliantly! What a fabulous free kick goal!
I've always said he was the best player I've ever played with. And
He became a darling of the Kop, and there was nothing he couldn't do. His ability was unquestioned.
When people always talk about the favourite players for Liverpool, it always tends to be Kenny Dalglish. You know, that's what the consensus is. You know, but I always say John Barnes, and the reason for that is that he gave the team something different.
Oh, Watson can't get there. Barnes does. Liverpool have scored.
John could do anything. He could cross it on their own. He could head it. He could give it to him for 5 minutes if he needed a rest. He was just one of those outstanding special players.
Finding Beardsley away on the left in a lot of space is Barnes, and he's onside. United have been caught out here. Will they be punished? They are by John Barnes. 1-0.
That ability to control the ball almost instantaneously and to gain half a yard of space for himself is something that you can never teach a player. And the ability that John had was awesome.
Oh my word! What can you do about that? Absolutely nothing.
The best finisher I've ever seen, even in training. And to be serious, I've never seen him give the ball away in training. He was that good.
Little chip by Barnes. Brilliant goal by John Barnes.
His technical ability. It was South American, it was Brazilian, there's no doubt about it, you know.
Apart from being a brilliant football player, John Barnes is a brilliant person, because he joined Liverpool at a time when racism was still around in football. It was still on the terraces.
He was brought in from Watford for £900,000 in 1987. It was important at the time because it knocked down a few boundaries. Liverpool hadn't had a black player since Howard Gale, and Gale had only been a bit part player.
John was very high profile, and he came, and John's attitude was simply, I'll play my football, say what the heck you like, I'll ignore it. And the best way to convince football fans that he was a great player was to do that out on the pitch, and that's what John did.
Barnes, it looks for goal!
Merseyside clubs didn't tend to have back players, you know. And I remember with John Barnes coming, it caused a bit of a furore, really, you know.
I mean, he put up with some terrible incidents.
And there was the famous banana throwing incidents.
But he managed it with dignity.
And I think that takes enormous strength of character. And for me, John's contribution to eradicating racism from football has been enormous.
Got Barnes to his left. Here is John Barnes, onside. That'll do it. That'll finish Manchester City off.
I think perhaps the fact that Liverpool had never really been, never had black players in the side, probably gave John an initial problem. But he soon transformed that way of thinking to become a real favourite, irrespective of his race.
And they just haven't got that right as Barnes strides away and makes it 4. This is wonderful. It's slaughter here.
But he was the first truly superstar black player in English football. There'd been previous players, but I mean, he was really something very, very special. And what he did for black players in this country is really quite significant.
Barnes
got to look at John Barnes outside of the context of Liverpool Football Club and look at him in the context of football and the impact that John has made and the model that John has set for everybody in our society to say, look, black, white, green, blue, yellow with pink dots on. If you can play football, that's all we're interested in.
Even, you know, the crazy, stupid people who refused to accept that black players had any worth, at the end of 90 minutes had to admit that this guy was something special, and I think he broke a lot of barriers down, and it was great. I think for me, I think it's great that Liverpool had John.
When he came to Liverpool, we had our doubts how good he was.
But there were questions asked about Barnes because there was talk that he wants to go to a London club. He's always denied that. I think that was paper talk.
But from that point on, when he came to Anfield, he matured into probably one of the best ever Liverpool players, and he soon became a crowd favourite.
He's got away from Staunton. Marsh it towards Thomas. Barnes maybe. Yes!
If anyone had any doubts as a Liverpool fan, as soon as they saw him in the flesh playing, you know, they were just cast aside, you know.
It's easy to make generalisations, maybe it's even dangerous to make generalisations, but I think there's always the foolish element who had a bad reaction, but most people warmed fairly quickly to him. Once you saw him run with the ball and what he could do with the ball, he won a lot of fans over.
Magnificent flying scissor kick!
His first home game was actually 3 weeks into the season because there was a collapsed sewer at the Cop End, and in the away games his reputation built up, and those who hadn't got to see him were desperate to see him. In the first game against Oxford, and it was a lockout that day, there was 1,000 locked out. I remember he scored a 30-yard free kick.
It's another lockout at Anfield, where every seat for this match was sold 2.5 weeks ago, and queues for the Cop were forming before noon.
Well, as soon as John Barnes signed for Liverpool, we knew we were onto something good in that game, and just after the Cop had been reopened and he scored that goal against QPR, we knew we were away.
Barnes won it. He won it from Brock. He's got Beardsley going to his left, but still Barnes. That's a fabulous individual goal.
I mean, that team from 87, 88 team, he was the top man. I watched him down that left wing. I used to sit in the Camera Road that season, and it was him and Steve Nicol down that wing. Steve Nicol and John Barnes down that wing, it takes some beating. You're looking at maybe 35, 40 million's worth of talent with them two now.
He was player of the year that season, and I mean the older generation I speak to can speak no higher of Barnes than to say he compares favourably with Billy Liddell.
He could ride the tackle and then whip that cross in, which people like Aldridge and Beardsley were only too happy to mop up and put in the net. So the team with Barnes, Aldridge, Beardsley in was a fantastic team. It was a shame they weren't in Europe, because I've no doubt we'd have like 8 or 9 European Cups by now.
Barnes. Rush, Barnes again. Oh, brilliantly done! Brilliantly done by Liverpool, and it's one apiece.
He didn't kick and run. He walked past players, and that was the great thing about John Barnes. I always remember him. I always used to go in the corner of the Cop, when they were attacking the Cop, and he was coming down the wing by the Cameron Road. He literally walked past players. You didn't know what he was going to do.
I always say that I made him the player he was because he had to have someone to give him the ball, and the majority of the time it was me.
You can go on and on and on about John Barnes' abilities to play football. They were phenomenal. John was one of the most exciting players that this football club has ever seen. His ability to go past people, his ability to cross the ball, his ability to score goals, his ability to pick out a pass are just phenomenal.
Berger. Barnes! It's raining goals at Anfield tonight.
And I remember when he had a serious injury, and then he came back into the team as a central midfield player. I think for several years he was central midfield, and people said, oh, he's lost his pace and that, but he didn't need pace in the position he was playing. He was actually played like a Brazilian called Dunga he used to play, and he didn't. And his vision in the middle of midfield was unbelievable. And I think I saw him miscontrol the ball once in 7 years. You know, his first touch was immaculate, and he could always pick up that pass.
Oh, look at Barnes here. They're waiting for the pullback. Beardsley! Oh!
I mean, John Barnes, it's difficult to explain how good he was, to be honest. I mean,
he was on a different level to even, you know, you're playing with top players every day, but he was on a different level.
I think he's rightfully remembered as one of the greatest players of modern-day Liverpool.
I know Dalglish brought other things to the team, but the most exciting player I ever thought was John Barnes.
When he played here, I mean, I would have rated him probably one of the best players in Britain, and probably go into Europe then.
I just wish Digger had got his chance to perform in a European Cup final at stage. That's my one regret with John Barnes.
From probably 87 to 1991, he was the best player in Britain and probably in the best 4 or 5 players in the world.
Besant now, Barnes with a goal to aim at. Is it going to go in for John Barnes? Besant roaring, can't keep it out, and Barnes has scored an extraordinary goal.
Well, of course, it's a tremendous honour because Liverpool have had great players down the years. I think that anyone on the 45, as I am, are at a bit of an advantage because over the years Liverpool have had some fantastic players. And I suppose, you know, the generation of the 90s, 80s, 90s, you probably have more people voting than the generation of the 60s and 70s. So, you know, I'm very surprised at that, but I think that age has something to do with it. You'll see the younger players probably getting up there. But over the years, Liverpool have had some fantastic players. I mean, you know, and to even be in the top 20, never mind the top 10, is a fantastic honour.
There's still 4 to be announced yet as we count down to number 1. But some of the players who've come behind you, so you've finished ahead of them, Graham Souness, Roger Hunt, Ian Callaghan.
Well, I mean, you know, once again, all great players, but apart from Graham Souness, they played in the 60s, and I suppose, you know, people in the 60s, you know, people probably don't get as many votes from people in the 60s. You know, that's why this is, once again, as I say, it's a fantastic honour, but it could be a little bit warped in terms of who the actual voters are. So, but, you know, Graham Souness is a great player. I mean, I was there for 10 years and at Liverpool, and it was a fantastic time for me. So, you know, to be even classed ahead of them, and of course, Graham Souness is a maybe even triple European Cup winner. I don't know how many, he's won it at least twice. So, you know, to be even mentioned in the same breath as people like that, you know, is fantastic.
Have you got a personal favourite memory from your whole time at Liverpool? Is there anything that sticks out? Just one moment?
The one moment that actually does stick out is the game against QPR here where we won 4-0 and I scored 2 goals. And QPR at the time were second in the league, might even been top, but we were very, very close. And, you know, it was like, well, we're going to come to it. Obviously, they weren't saying it, but, you know, the whole thing was like, you know, battle of the champions, who's going to win, and we really stamped our authority on the league in that performance here against Queen's Park Rangers. Secondly, I think that it was Ian Rush's first game back to actually watch. He was in the stand watching, and I suppose it was in a strange sort of way. I suppose we all felt under pressure. We all felt, never mind the 40-odd thousand Liverpool fans, Ian Rush was here watching myself, Peter Beardsley, John Aldridge, and Ray Houghton type of thing, and it was like he's coming to see how we play. To you know, now that he's there anymore, let's see what these boys can do type of thing, and it was just a fantastic performance. So, from an individual perspective, I scored 2 goals against David Seaman, which is always nice, and to score against David. And the fact that we'd beaten QPR, so that is the memory that sticks out.
There's 4 players still to be unveiled. I mean, I'll just name them. I won't name them in any particular order, but you might.
You want me to name them? Are you going to test me?
You can guess. You can have a guess who are the top 4.
Kenny Dalglish should be 1.
Ian
Rush will be 1.
He's in there.
Kevin Keegan would be 1.
He's not in there.
Okay. Well, Ian Rush, Kenny Dalglish, Steven Gerrard.
He's in there.
There you go. And the last one, I would actually have Alan Hansen.
He's actually come up already. Well, Robbie Fowler completes the 4.
All right, okay.
Can you just talk a little bit about each of those players? Robbie Fowler, I mean, you helped nurture through.
Yeah, well, Robbie Fowler was just a fantastic goal scorer. And in fact, Robbie Fowler, for me, is the most, since Ian Rush, is the most natural goal scorer. He's the most natural goal scorer at the club now. Obviously, with Robbie's injuries and his fitness means that he's made, particularly this day and age where you really do have to be fit to score goals. In terms of, Alan Shearer, whoever else you want to say who's played in the last 10 years, Robbie Fowler has been, even people who may have scored more goals than Robbie. Robbie would be the most natural finisher around in the last 10, 15 years.
Kenny Dalglish?
Well, Kenny was just the greatest player Liverpool have ever had, as far as I'm concerned, because, you know, his awareness, his ability, and it was strange because I remember playing against Kenny and thinking what a great player he was, and then coming to Liverpool, and when he was the manager, he would always join in the 5-a-sides. And he was the worst 5-a-side player in the world. Because Kenny, remembered what he was like when he was a fantastic player and he's a great player. So Kenny still tried to do the things he did when he was coming off anymore, but he would still, because of his confidence, still try to do it. But, you know, he's just intelligent as a footballer. Very, very intelligent footballer. For someone who, you may say Kenny may not have the greatest skill if you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, not the greatest pace if you look at Ian Rush. His finishing ability is not the greatest finisher. I mean, he'll still score his goals, but that's not his thing. His thing is more of a link play like Peter Beardsley. But his intelligence just made him so special, you know, and I like intelligent footballers, and he was just fantastic, most intelligent player.
Ian Rush?
Now, I had to mention Ian, because I mentioned Robbie in the last 10, 15 years, but Ian Rush is from my era, and he would be the greatest centre-forward I've ever played with or I've ever seen. Only because when you talk about goal scorers, and people talk about who's a better goal scorer, Robbie Fowler's included in this, Alan Shearer, Gary Lineker, over the years you've always had him. And the way I see it is that you look at someone and you say, right, who's the greatest goal scorer? They're all scoring 30 goals a season. They're all scoring 25, 30 goals a season. Some goals may be better than others, some may be quicker, some may be faster, headers, tap-ins, whatever. But they're all scoring 25 to 30 goals a season. So how do you then separate them if they're all scoring the same amount of goals? And I look at what else they do for the team. And for me, Ian Rush was just the most selfless player from a centre-forward's point of view, because centre-forwards are supposed to be quite greedy and quite selfish. But the work he put in closing down the back four, he was our best defender. In fact, in 5-a-sides, he used to play at the back and you couldn't get past him. So when he closed the goalkeeping down, closed the defenders down, dropped back into midfield to intercept balls, as well as scoring his goals, that's what sets him aside.
And the last of the four is Steven Gerrard.
Well, Steven Gerrard is the complete midfield player for me. Complete midfield player. Graham Souness is probably the one that you would liken him to, but he's probably more attack-minded than Graham Souness. His passing is as good, but he can get forward and take people on and score goals. He can also defend. And also, I think the importance of Steven Gerrard is really because of how, and I won't say single-handedly, because I don't believe in anyone doing anything from a team perspective single-handedly. But if you look at the FA Cup last year, the Champions League, where Liverpool probably aren't as good as the other teams, but he has made them that good.
Steven Gerrard's won everything bar the Premiership so far, and he's only the age that Kenny Dalglish was when he actually joined Liverpool. Do you think Steven could go on to become maybe Liverpool's best ever player?
Well, it really depends on how Liverpool does. Because as much as you can be the best ever player, I think it really depends on the stature of the team. I mean, Phil Neal has won 4 European Cups, which is 4 Champions Leagues and 8 Premier League medals. You know, is Steven going to do that? Probably not. So it depends on what you mean in terms of best ever player. In terms of winning things or in terms of just being a great player, because he already is, as you say, in the top 4 of being the greatest player. So as to whether he's going to be number 1, that really depends on how far Liverpool goes.
And of those 4, who do you think will be number 1?
Who do I think should be number 1 or who do I think will be number 1?
Both.
Well, I think Kenny Dalglish should be number 1. But it wouldn't surprise me if Steven Gerrard's number 1, because obviously people are voting now. And as I said when I talked about myself, obviously, you know, because people in the 60s weren't voting. So if you remember Billy Little, for example, who could be number 1. But obviously, you know, those people aren't voting now. So it wouldn't surprise me if Steven Gerrard's number 1. But I would think it will be between those two.